So for those pre-K and kindergarten students, we're going to talk about the content that's designed and kind of the rationale behind how why Dreambox chooses the content, how we chose that content, and what we're really thinking about targeting for these students. So we're going to start just in talking about the age ranges and what's happening developmentally. So starting here, we Dreambox curriculum expectations really are start with grade or age 2 expectations. So this table kind of explains some of the developmental levels that Dreambox really is working to support for comparing and ordering. This is also, by the way, cited our source here at the bottom. So this is from Doug Clements and Learning and Teaching Early Math. So just to go through this chart really quickly, when we're talking about comparing and ordering numbers, you really want the students to compare collections that are really noticeably different. So one's at least twice as large as the others. So you'll see that in some of the very, very initial lessons. Also see that students are identifying that a number of objects in a group, small groups, and they're organized in different ways. Also looking to see that the student can match small equal collections of items that are not exactly the same. So to give you a kind of a visual of what that looks like in Dreambox, we're going to go into those lesson groups. So 2 of the lesson groups, and these are the ones that we introduce to students very first thing when they work in Dreambox, are comparing 1 to 10 and identifying more, less, or equal. Okay, so we've got those nice visuals. And when they work with these visuals, the audio directions would be, we're going to ask them to find which one is more or find which one is less. Also in the second item on the right-hand side, we're going to ask them to tell us which ones are equal. So these are really the very introductory lessons. One thing to consider when you're first putting your students on Dreambox is, do they have that vocabulary? Because thinking back to my kindergarten students, they didn't come in with that. They knew bigger and smaller, but they didn't know the math vocabulary of more and less. So that may be something we need to emphasize for those students as they're getting started in Dreambox. And of course, we're going to introduce equal where they're the same. So moving forward with this, then we're going to we'll go into the next one. So this is also worth thinking about as students at age range of 2. Students can find sums for joining up problems. So if they've got 2 items and we ask them to add 3 more items into a 10 frame, for example, which is one of the structures that they'll work with, then we ask the student to count, how many items do you have now? So this is really getting them to work on adding and subtracting. And this is using their counting-based strategies to add and subtract at these early levels. So here's 2 examples. So beginning, adding, and removing, and building 1 to 10 optimally are the Dreambox learning units or lesson groups that the students would work in. So for example, on this left-hand side, they're using the 10 frame to add 0, and they'll have audio directions to go with this. And they're adding just 1 beat at a time because you realize a lot of our students that's just right where they are in their developmental level. On the other side, we're giving them a number of items at the top, and we're asking them to replicate it using the beads on the tray on the right-hand side and pulling it into the 10 frame here. And so this is another way that we're asking students to use those counting strategies to work with addition and subtraction techniques. Now, they're actually going to get into the next topic here. So this is going to also, one of the things that the students are going to have to work on also, or know also getting into Dreambox, is being able to represent and recall sets with pictures, icons, representations of quantity. And then when they're right about 4 years old, we do want them to also be able to match sets 1 to 5 with corresponding numbers and recall those, the size of the sets using the numbers, which I know Sometimes we have students who come into our buildings who haven't seen numbers before. I know plenty of my kindergartners did, so that's something we definitely need to work on with them too. So this is a little bit more advanced, so building decades on a hundreds chart, and we all know at kindergarten we spend a lot of time with 1 through 10 and 11 through 20. Then also building 1 to 10 optimally. So this one is that we saw that before when we're adding on. Now we're also finding the digit on the digit line. And we're trying to also work on building this number in the fewest number of moves possible. So in this particular example, finding 5 and then 3 to create that number 8. Now, I do want to address an issue that Shannon brought up, and she says it jumps a bit. One student was working on filling in a hundreds chart, one line of it, and she was getting discouraged because she just didn't get it. You know what? I'm going to show you when we go into assignments, we're going to go into some different assignment examples, and I'm going to make sure that we go into that building so I can show you where that is, how to find it, and then that's something we can practice with students. And I'm also going to send that feedback to our development team that it's jumping around a bit, so they can take a look at that. And Shannon, if you can let me know, you can send me a private message and let me know that student so we can take a look at their account, because I definitely want to make sure that we're giving that kid everything that they need to be successful. So thanks for sharing that. All right, so last couple things. So one of the things that we really work on is subitizing. So instantly recognizing collections of objects. At the age 3, we expect them to be able to instantly recognize collections of objects with 4 or less when it's briefly flashed or briefly shown. It does get more complicated as they're working through that pre-K and kindergarten content. So here's a couple examples. So we flash through on the left-hand side at the top, it stays stagnant, and we flash the numbers at the bottom, and we ask them to find which one is more. On the other side, on the right-hand side, sometimes we'll flip that top card and ask the student to maybe match the number in some cases, or to find something that is more or less. Okay. And so these are just a couple examples of some of the things that students will get introduced to at that pre-K kindergarten level. Now, along with those lessons and these units that are really developmentally appropriate for students who are coming in at kind of preschool, kindergarten level, we also need to focus on behaviors with students in kindergarten. So, so we know that there's a lot we have to teach. We have to teach those kids about how to be in school. So we need to demonstrate, we need them to really get these modeled by you all. So we ask them to wait for the lesson to load, to listen to the directions, to think, and then to select. And I know that that can be really tough, because I think about my my kindergarten kids, and I think about the ones I call them my impulsive puppies. Those ones who just love to click and love to move and just want to get through it and engage. So this can be really helpful to have these visuals, and I'll make sure I send this slide out so it can be sent out to everyone implementing Dreambox. Just as a reminder, but you can also give them, I always love to do a little bit of a visual too, and a little bit of a dance. And so you can remember, tell them to wait, to listen, to think, and then to select. And so that can be really, really helpful. You know, they've got that little dance, wait, oh yeah, I'm supposed to listen, to think, and then to select, and that can help the students. Sometimes I'm sure you'll probably see them even doing that little dance with their computers too. So, and great question from Jeff. So sometimes the subitizing opportunities do use the 10 frames, and we do use the 10 frames in those subitizing opportunities because I realize that they need that 10 frame structure to really understand and help them see those object groupings. So yes, absolutely. And you know what? That actually brings us up. So you gave me the perfect segue, Jeff, to the next slide, because one of the things that you can do is explicitly teach these students with some of these tools. So there is a way to do that within the Dreambox dashboard and through the also through the Teacher Hub. When you go to the Teacher Tools, you can bring up some of these interactive lessons. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick so you can use these in your classrooms. So, ooh, it logged me out of my dashboard. All right, here we go. So from your dashboard, when you log in, oops, if you log in correctly, here we go. If you go to the resource hubs and then select your Teacher Hub, if you scroll partway down that page, so I'm going to scroll, here we go to the Teacher Tools. This gives you interactive whiteboard tools that you can use with your kids. And we included some of those subitizing lessons because we realized that that often can be really a big challenge. So we've got kindergarten number sense and equivalence lessons, as well as kindergarten addition and subtraction lessons. And those are really pre-K and kindergarten level lessons. I'm also, when we get to Assign Focus, I'm going to show you ways that you can access these lessons through Assign Focus. There's actually a preview lesson button, and you can use those in your classrooms as well. So we'll definitely make sure we get to that. Now, another thing that we want to make sure happens when students are working in Dreambox is that we're monitoring their work. So one of the best ways to quickly identify if they're maybe not efficiently completing lessons is to use the Classroom Overview Report. So each column of the report, remember, is going to be sortable. So if you go in and click on the lessons column, that's going to sort the kids from least to greatest for as far as their lesson completion. And so, for example, we're going to take a look at Jewel here, who's only completed 2 lessons in 24 minutes. Now remember, when students are completing lessons, the lessons should take them about 5 to 10 minutes, and they should be able to complete about 5 to 10 lessons per week if they've got 30 to 60 minutes in Dreambox. So keeping in mind Jewel, who had 2 lessons in 24 minutes, we take a look at her. She's actually a kid who's clicking into and out of lessons. So that's another thing, that behavior that we can see from our pre-K and kindergarten students. Even our older students sometimes have this behavior. So we need to remind them to go into the lessons and to complete the lessons. And if they're having trouble, we can play the lesson with them using this play lesson button. That's another way to provide a little support for them. We also want to take a look at those lesson cards. So just as a reminder, we'll see the lesson paused. If they're having trouble, then we'll see the check mark in it, letting us know that Dreambox adapted backward. Or if they're really having a hard time, then we'll see that they have a may need attention symbol. The other thing that we might see from our students who are just learning about all about Dreambox is sometimes when they're in that learning environment, they'll go up into My House and they'll spend some extended time there. So, or even in the top right-hand corner into the arcade. Those are really fun and really engaging. They love getting the coins. They love playing the games. But if we find that the students are spending too much time in those areas, we can always turn that off by going into the dashboard, going into your classroom, clicking the edit button, and turning them off in the engagement restrictions tab. And just let me know if anyone wants me to go over how to do that. I'm more than happy to do that as well. So I want to pause before we get to Assign Focus next, and just let me know if you have any questions about how to support your students and about that content. Because I know that not every student walks into our building ready for everything we want to do with them, especially in kindergarten. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about different ways to help those students, and also about the content so that you have a better understanding and help those kids. So hopefully we can get them on Dreambox too. So I'll just pause for a moment and see if anyone has any questions. Great question. So great. You know what, Jamie, I hear you. So you're right. Language can be tough for a lot of our students. And I totally understand. And I would say, like, go for those teacher tools to help them and to get them ready for Dreambox. And I'll teach you how to use Assign Focus so that you can all get those students ready to go on Dreambox too. All right. So And Jeff, you missed that answer to Larissa's question. Great, I'm glad you asked it again. So if the student has on their activity card, they have that little triangle with an exclamation point in it. If the student has that, then that means that the student has completed, is having trouble with that. So they failed similar lessons in that lesson group 2 or more times. And then our suggestion is really click the play lesson link to check with the student, see if determine if they're stuck, and then you can coach them, see if they're using the manipulative, see if they're using the help button, and see kind of what that gap or misunderstanding is. So, you know what, Jamie? Yes, there is pre-K content, and we'll show you that in the assigned focus. I think is a good way to get into it. Some of it is pre-K content, and it's getting them ready for some of that kindergarten content too. So I'll show you how to get into from the Dreambox learning units in the assigned focus.